Picture this. In the heart of the Nevada desert, dust clouds swirling, 15 Harley-Davidson motorcycles cutting through the wasteland like a zipper, but nobody knows what their leader, Tank Jackson, is searching for, or who he's ridden this far to meet. Because 3 days ago, he received a phone call that would become the most surprising moment of his 30-year Hells Angels career. The caller's voice carried a familiar Birmingham accent. "Tank mate, I've got a proposition for you. But first, I'm wondering if you remember me. Who was this man, and why was he calling Tank's private number?" But what Tank didn't know yet was that in just a few hours, he'd come face to face with one of the rarest treasures in motorcycle history. Tank Jackson, real name Robert Jackson, 52 years old, and leader of the Los Angeles Hells Angels charter. Standing 6 feet 3 inches and weighing 280 pounds, this man with arms covered in tattoos had been one of the most respected names in the motorcycle world since the 1990s. His left arm bore the words, "Born to Ride." His right arm displayed an eagle and American flag tattoo. Today, riding through the Nevada desert following GPS coordinates, he was trying to figure out the reason behind Ozzy's mysterious behavior. Riding alongside him were his most trusted men. Razor Murphy, a Vietnam veteran with a knife scar across his face. Snake Williams, a master motorcycle mechanic. Bull Thompson, the club's strongest member, and 11 other riders. They were all consumed with curiosity because Tank had never acted this mysteriously before. "Everyone follow me," he'd shouted as they left Los Angeles. "But I'll tell you right now, this ain't no ordinary meeting." Tank remembered 3 days earlier. He'd been sitting in the clubhouse, looking at old Harley photographs on the wall when his phone rang. That evening was particularly melancholic because it was the anniversary of his father, George Jackson's death. His father had also been a Harley enthusiast, an old mechanic who rode a Sportster in the 1960s. Tank's love for motorcycles came from his father. "Tank Jackson," he'd answered, and the voice on the other end had said, "Tank, this is Ozzy Osbourne. We met a few months ago in Arizona, remember?" Tank's heart had nearly stopped. Of course he remembered. That night had been legendary. They'd encountered Ozzy in the Arizona desert on Route 66 while getting gas. The man had been sitting by the roadside, next to his car, head in his hands. Tank and his crew had stopped to help. "Mr. Osbourne, of course I remember, but this call is a bit surprising," Tank had said. Ozzy's characteristic chuckle came through the phone. "Tank mate, I want to give you the biggest surprise of your life. But you'll need to come to Nevada for it. I'll text you the coordinates." Tank couldn't forget that Arizona night. When they'd found Ozzy, the man had been in really bad shape. He'd had a huge fight with Sharon, stormed out of the house, and had been driving around for hours. "I'm feeling completely lost, mates," Ozzy had said that night, his voice trembling. 43 years together with Sharon, and sometimes I still don't understand women." Tank and his crew had taken him to the clubhouse, fed him, and listened to his stories. Ozzy had told them about Black Sabbath's early days, his impoverished childhood years in Birmingham, and how music had saved his life. "You know what's funny?" Ozzy had said, his eyes misty. "I've performed for millions of people, but tonight, sitting here with you guys, I feel more at home than I have in months." Tank had never forgotten that night. It wasn't about meeting a rock legend, it was about befriending a lost soul. When Ozzy left the next morning, he'd said, "I'll never forget this kindness, Tank. Real friends are rare in this world." Now the coordinates he'd given them led to an antique motorcycle museum in the middle of the desert. The Desert Dreams Motorcycle Museum sign gleamed in the sunlight. The building was old but well-maintained, with various vintage motorcycles displayed around it. As Tank and his crew parked their bikes, an elderly man who owned the museum came out to greet them. With his long white beard, cowboy hat, and old levies, he was a typical desert character. "You must be Mr. Jackson and his crew," the man said in an Arizona drawl. "Call me George. Mr. Osbourne is waiting for you inside. I'll tell you what, I've been in this business for 40 years, but I've never seen a day this exciting." Tank was confused. What was Ozzy doing at this museum? As George led them toward the museum entrance, he started explaining. "Mr. Osbourne came here 3 months ago, asked me to help him with a special project. Very generous man, too. Spent quite a bit of money on this project. When they walked inside, they saw Ozzy standing in the center of the massive hall. In his faded jeans, black t-shirt, and that familiar smile. He waved at them. He looked older than when Tank had last seen him, but his energy was still there. "Tank! Thanks for coming, mate. I hope the journey wasn't too long. Sharon told me, Ozzy, this is a bloody stupid idea. But I told her, Sharon, love, some things can't be measured in money." Razor looked around in amazement. "Mr. Osbourne, this place is incredible. I've never seen so many vintage Harleys in one place. The museum walls were covered with Harley-Davidson posters from various eras, old racing photographs and motorcycle parts." But Tank's eyes immediately locked onto the motorcycle behind Ozzy. There, magnificently restored, stood a 1936 Harley-Davidson EL Knucklehead on a special platform, illuminated by a spotlight. This is impossible," Tank whispered as he approached the motorcycle. Knuckleheads were among the most important models in Harley history. The first big V-twin engine, the first modern Harley design. And this example, it was perfect. The original silver paint gleamed in the sunlight, the handmade leather seat looked like it had never been worn, and the vintage Harley logo sat proudly on the tank. The Knucklehead lettering on the engine block was clearly readable. "This is a 1936 model, isn't it?" Tank asked, his voice trembling. Snake moved closer and began examining the engine. "Tank, this isn't just restored. This looks like it just rolled off the factory floor. Look at those chrome parts. Look at those details." Ozzy nodded. "Exactly right, mate. And it's not just any 1936. This is the same model that Elvis Presley owned. Not the exact same motorcycle, of course, but same year, same model, same color." Bull couldn't believe it. "Elvis's motorcycle? Are you serious?" George, the museum owner, stepped in, pride gleaming in his eyes. "Restoring this motorcycle took exactly 3 years. Every part is from the original period. The engine was completely rebuilt, but only with parts from 1936. Transmission, brakes, electrical system, everything is period correct. This is probably one of the most perfect knucklehead examples in the world." The old man walked around the motorcycle, continuing his explanation. "The hardest part was finding the right parts. For some of them, we scoured antique markets for months. We had the engine block rebuilt by a specialist craftsman, using only 1930s techniques. The carburetor is an original Linkert model. Even the tires are period-correct Firestone replicas." Tank and his crew circled the motorcycle, examining every detail. Razor touched his hand to the engine. "Do you feel this warmth? This engine's been running. It's not just for show." George smiled. "Of course it runs. Mr. Osbourne specifically requested it. This shouldn't be just for looking at. It should be for riding," he said. But Tank still didn't understand why Ozzy had brought them here. The motorcycle was magnificent, but what did it have to do with them? Ozzy seemed to read his thoughts and began speaking. "Tank, this motorcycle has a story. In the 1930s, this was the fastest motorcycle in the world. 61 cubic inch engine, about 40 horsepower. Might seem small by today's standards, but for that time, it was revolutionary." Snake asked curiously, "So what's this particular motorcycle's story?" Ozzy fixed his eyes on the motorcycle. "This bike was used by a police officer in California in the 1950s. Then it passed to a collector's hands and sat in a garage for years. When I found this motorcycle, it was nearly destroyed. But George and his team worked a miracle." George added, "Mr. Osbourne took this project very seriously. This isn't just a restoration, this is storytelling," he said. "He was with us every step of the way." Tank was starting to get impatient. The motorcycle was amazing, the story was impressive, but what was Ozzy's purpose? "Mr. Osbourne," Tank said, "this really is a magnificent motorcycle. But why did you call us here?" Ozzy's expression changed, an unusually serious tone appearing in his voice. "Tank, I couldn't forget that evening we spent in Arizona, the night I fought with Sharon and ended up alone in the desert crying. When you found me, I felt lost and alone. That night I was a 73-year-old man, world famous, sold millions of albums, but I was still crying like a child. Marriage is bloody difficult, mate, especially after 43 years. Razor and the others listened quietly, moved by Ozzy's sincerity. You took me into your home, fed me, listened to my stories. That night you made me feel like family, Ozzy continued. When I returned to Sharon, I told her about you. These men didn't know me, but they helped me anyway, I said. Sharon replied, Ozzy, people like that are rare. You should do something for them. Tank's eyes filled with tears. That night they had truly welcomed Ozzy like family, but they hadn't expected anything in return. Mr. Osbourne, we just did what was right. We helped a stranded man. Ozzy laughed. Tank mate, you're so humble. What you showed me that night is the rarest thing in the world. Unconditional kindness. I was a stranger, and you treated me like your own son. Bull interjected. Mr. Osbourne, that night was special for us too. I'm not talking about meeting a legend. I'm talking about becoming friends with a real human being. Ozzy touched the motorcycle, the silver paint gleaming under his fingers. Tank, that's why I had this motorcycle restored. This knucklehead is now yours, and it's not just a motorcycle. This certificate that comes with it details the bike's history and restoration process. Tank's mouth fell open. Mr. Osbourne, this is too much. This motorcycle is probably worth $150,000 to $200,000. Ozzy shrugged characteristically. Tank, money doesn't matter to me. Sharon always says, Ozzy, what good is your money in the grave? She's right too. But friendship, that's something else. The compassion you showed me that night brought me home. Sharon and I made up. I talked to my children. You saved my life, and you don't even realize it. Snake asked in amazement. So how long did this restoration take? George answered, 3 years. Mr. Osbourne would come every month to check the progress. He kept saying, this motorcycle must be special for Tank. Tank's voice trembled as he struggled to find words. I don't even know what to say. In 30 years with the Angels, I've never... He stopped, overwhelmed, his tough exterior cracking completely. But Ozzy wasn't finished. His eyes lit up with that familiar mischief as he snapped his fingers. George, bring out the other surprise. The museum owner disappeared and returned wheeling something covered by a black cloth. Tankmate, you didn't think I'd give you a priceless motorcycle without the perfect way to display it, did you? He whipped off the cloth, revealing a stunning custom display case made of polished steel and glass. This beauty is going right in the center of your clubhouse, where every rider, every visitor, every person who walks through those doors will see it and know the story. Snake's jaw dropped. Mr. Osbourne, you've thought of everything. Ozzy suddenly became serious. Tank, there's also this. The document that comes with this motorcycle isn't just a certificate. It's also the bike's maintenance manual, spare parts list, and special insurance policy. Think of it like a 0-mile warranty. George added, the engine has a 5-year warranty. If there are any problems, I'll personally handle them. Tank couldn't believe it. You've thought of every detail. Ozzy smiled like a mischievous child. Tank mate, I'm a details man. Even when choosing Sharon's birthday gift, I planned for months. This gift had to be special for you. Snake noticed a small detail on the motorcycle. Is that Tank's name? Tank looked closer, and there really was small lettering that read, Robert Tank Jackson, Los Angeles Hells Angels. When did you have this done? Tank asked in amazement. George answered, as a final touch, last week. It was Mr. Osbourne's request. At sunset, Tank rode his new knucklehead, while Ozzy's old Toyota followed behind. The sound the engine made while running was incredible, deep, powerful, that characteristic knucklehead rumble. The other Hells Angels members escorted them like a royal convoy. Tank had tears in his eyes, but he was smiling. That evening when they returned to Los Angeles, everyone was shocked the moment they entered the clubhouse. The other members couldn't believe the motorcycle Tank had brought. Tank, where did this knucklehead come from? They asked. As Tank and Ozzy told the story, everyone was mesmerized. Ozzy was there too, drinking beer and telling old stories. You know, Ozzy said, people call me the Prince of Darkness, but the real darkness is the indifference people show each other. You were my light that night. Tank stood up, raising his beer. To Ozzy Osbourne! Not as a rock legend, but as a true friend. The room echoed with applause. Razor added, "And to this knucklehead," now the proud symbol of our clubhouse. Snake smiled and said, "Mr. Osbourne, this motorcycle isn't just a gift, it's a legacy. A story we'll pass down to future generations." Ozzy nodded. "Exactly, mate. That's what life is about, creating stories worth telling." George, the museum owner, had also been invited and was telling the story. "I've been in this business for 40 years, but I've never experienced such a special project." Every detail was prepared with love. As the evening progressed, Ozzy and Tank went to the backyard of the clubhouse for a private conversation. The stars were shining, and the lights of Los Angeles could be seen in the distance. "Tank," Ozzy said, "you told me something that Arizona night. You said, 'Sometimes the most unexpected moments change your life.' That night was just helping a stranger for you. For me, it was the turning point of my life." Tank listened, deeply moved by Ozzy's sincerity. "Mr. Osbourne, I just did what my father taught me. He always said, 'Robert, help someone stranded on the road. One day you might be stranded too.'" Ozzy smiled. "Wise man, your father. And you've become a wise man like him." Tank's eyes filled with tears. "My father would have wanted to see this day. He was also a Harley lover, but never had the chance to own a motorcycle like this." Ozzy put his hand on Tank's shoulder. "Tank, mate, I'm sure your father is looking down with pride right now." At the end of the night, as everyone was leaving, Ozzy had prepared one final surprise for Tank. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. "This is also for you. Open it at home." Tank took the envelope, wondering what was inside. Ozzy added with a laugh, "I'll tell Sharon. Mission accomplished, love." Tank isn't sad anymore. He's happy. Tank laughed. "Mr. Osbourne, this story will be legendary for me. I'll tell it to my grandchildren." Ozzy replied with a genuine smile. "Good, because the best stories come from what we live." This wasn't just a story about a gift. It was a story about what true friendship can accomplish when it crosses social boundaries. And that 1936 knucklehead, standing in the most visible spot in the clubhouse, would ensure that everyone who saw it remembered this special bond. Inside the envelope was a copy of a rare photograph of Elvis Presley riding his original knucklehead, with Ozzy's handwriting on the back. "Tank, true kings recognize true kings. Ride free, brother." Ozzy. Tank would never forget that night, not just as receiving a motorcycle gift, but as the night he gained the friendship of a legend.